Good afternoon to our friends in Westchester County and to everyone tuning in for Mastercard. My name is Diego Ortiz and I am proud to serve as Communications Director for the American Heart Association. And let me be the first to wish you all a happy and healthy holiday season. In just a few minutes, we will be joined by a special guest, Dr. Cara Pensabene, who many of you know as the Global Medical Director for Mastercard, and who is an active supporter of the Go Red for Women movement across our region. We are also going to be joined by a longtime leader of the association in New York State, Dr. Patrick Thomas. He's Chief of Cardiology at New York Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital. And a little later, we will be treated to a hands-only CPR demonstration by a life-saving advocate, Melinda Murray. But before we begin, I want to remind everyone why we're here today. Heart disease is the #1 killer of Americans, and stroke is the leading cause of disability. This is serious, and the American Heart Association is dedicated to being a relentless force for a world of longer, healthier lives. With the goal of advancing research and public education, just this morning we published a press release in the hopes of raising the alarm about the fact that winter holidays bring more heart attack deaths than any other time of year. While the research isn't clear why this is the case, we do know that being aware of this annual phenomenon and taking a few important heart-healthy steps may save lives. So that's why we're here today. It is now my pleasure to welcome Dr. Cara Pensabene to share her opening remarks. Welcome, Dr. Pensabene.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Diego. And the pleasure is all mine to welcome you to today's webinar, which is the second community conversation we've hosted together this year as part of Mastercard's Live Fierce, Stand for All platform sponsorship with the Westchester chapter of the American Heart Association. Our first one being a meaningful health equity discussion this past spring. As the corporate medical director, my position within the Mastercard organization is to support and enhance the health and well-being of our employee population worldwide, which is in direct alignment with the American Heart Association's mission that Diego just shared, to be a relentless force for a world of longer, healthier lives. Our partnership allows us to use community conversations like these to make an impact, not only on the well-being of our Mastercard employee population and their families, but of the greater community in general. Now that Thanksgiving has passed, and we are already in the midst of the year-ending holiday season, both in the office and our personal lives, and we know December is going to be a busy month for most of us. It's my hope that you find today's discussion about holiday heart health to be not only timely, but also relevant. As Diego just said, studies show that more people die from heart attacks during the last week of December than at any other time of the year. Today, together with Dr. Thomas and our partners at the American Heart Association, our goal is to bring awareness to your heart health and to deliver important heart-healthy holiday season tips that very well may save a life this season. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Pensabene, and thank you to Mastercard for just being such amazing supporters of the mission of the American Heart Association. I'm really excited to continue this series, and I actually now want to extend the invitation to Dr. Patrick Thomas to join us as we begin to discuss in more detail what are the reasons why the holiday season is so particularly troublesome when it comes to heart health. And we know one of those reasons is stress. But what is it about this season, Dr. Pensabene? What makes the holidays such a stressful time?
You know, there's so much more happening in most of our lives during the holiday season than during the rest of the year. Holiday parties, dinners, religious services, work events, charity events, year-end meetings, gift giving, hosting, just to name a few. Reminders of the holiday season are everywhere. It begins after Halloween, and it's truly a hustle and bustle for some people. But it's really also important to remember for others, it can be a lonely and stressful time of year. And research has really shown that people are stressed during the holidays. 44% of people say that they're stressed, with more than 18% of people reporting that they're very stressed. And almost half of the people said that finances were the main reason for this stress, while being overscheduled, choosing the right gifts, and remaining healthy also contributed to people's stressors. And I know that's something that Dr. Thomas will speak to.
Thanks so much for having me today. It's great to be here with Mastercard and the American Heart Association and with everybody participating. The stresses you just mentioned have a direct effect on the heart. It's not indirect, it's direct. And for example, just this week, I can count literally several dozen patients that I've seen that reported their specific stressors over the holidays. A lot of it had to do with cooking turkey, but whether it's having a couple of dozen people at their house for the Thanksgiving holiday, whether it was the stress of beginning Christmas shopping, things like that, directly leads to elevations in the stress hormones in your body, which cause high blood pressure, cause fluid retention. And I've had even a couple of people have abnormal heart rhythms specifically due to the increased stress from the holidays. So all of the different things you mentioned, they're important. And through this discussion today, we'll talk about some of the ways we can help diffuse some of those stress hormones out of your system so that it's less likely to cause heart problems down the road.
Right. The link between the high stress levels and the negative impacts on heart health is so crucial, and part of why we're having this important conversation today, to help people implement lifestyle choices that can help curb stress during the holidays or any time of year.
Yeah, thank you both doctors for really initiating this conversation by really setting the scene for what we just experienced over the last week. And I want to make sure that we aren't only doom and gloom, that there is some optimism, because I know that often around Thanksgiving it is a chance for families to get together when it's a political season or even a sports season. Sometimes those conversations can become uncomfortable. That table talk can become heated or sometimes uncomfortable. But I always think that it's also a great time for us to have open discussions about our family health and our family health history. So Dr. Pensabene, why don't you tell us about why is it so important for us to be honest about our health history, especially with our family members?
Knowing your own health risks and those of your children that come after you starts with knowing your family's health history. And as you shared, kind of sometimes asking loved ones about their private health backgrounds can be awkward or even sometimes considered taboo. But you couldn't be more right about the time of year. I actually learned that Thanksgiving Day this year, November 24th, was National Family Health History Day. And most families are going to be gathering again before the year ends. So I do agree that the holidays are probably the best time of year to spark this kind of conversation. I'm sure Dr. Thomas has similar experiences, but from my experience as a physician and someone sitting around a holiday dinner table over the years, I've learned that people who are older and suffer from health issues, especially ones you might be able to visualize, they're the ones that might be more likely to discuss them openly. But it can be more challenging to start the conversation with younger parents or siblings. And some suggestions that I have about how to start that conversation is to make sure that you're sensitive, careful with the way that you phrase the questions. You really just are there to learn some basic information and to let them know that understanding your family medical history is important to you and your own health. And although it might be tempting, or you might have those relatives that share their health history, it's important to try not to have these conversations at the dinner table. It can be easy to share around the dinner table, but again, people who suffer from more private conditions or ones that might feel a little more personal might feel more comfortable talking about them in a quieter setting. Especially true for people who are more shy. And one tip is that you can ask them for their gift of time during the holidays, time to sit down and have a quick chat, and to write down what you learn is the other tip. You don't want to just rely on your memory when relaying the information back to your physician or back to Dr. Thomas. So write down the information that you'll have it available the next time you go to your doctor. And Dr. Thomas, what kinds of questions should people be asking their older family members or their more extended family members about their heart health and their personal medical histories?
So, I think anybody wants to know any family history just so they can prepare themselves for the future. And I think we know a lot of cardiovascular disease, whether it's heart attacks, strokes, heart rhythm disturbances, high blood pressure, diabetes, run in families. And so there are clear genetic components to this. And just asking the simple and basic questions: have you had high blood pressure? Have you had high cholesterol? Have you had your numbers checked? Actually, you'd be surprised how often people don't get their blood pressure checked. They don't get their cholesterol checked or their blood sugar checked. These are simple, easy things to do to help figure out where you're starting and how you can improve things. But a lot of times people think, well, if it's not something I know, I don't have to worry about it. But if you do have family members that have high blood pressure, you especially want to get your blood pressure checked. Same thing with diabetes, same thing with heart disease. My dad had his first cardiac event at 38. So unfortunately, my mom had one a few years later at a somewhat similar age. So that's incredibly important then for my own heart health and that of my children. And it can be embarrassing. It can be awkward and uncomfortable to talk about, but your life depends on it. And again, it shouldn't be a conversation like politics or arguing over the Eagles or the Jets or the Giants, right? It should be about just, hey, I need to know this information for myself and everybody that comes after me.
And Dr. Thomas, we often at the American Heart Association tell people to know your numbers. Can you give us that list? What are those key numbers that we should be looking for? You shared a few of them, but I'd love to hear them in order.
Yeah, so there's a list of between 7 and 8 parameters that we typically look at in terms of trying to stratify somebody's risk of having a heart attack or a stroke or other cardiovascular problem. And so your blood pressure, the top number and the bottom number, your blood sugar, your cholesterol, your weight, right? How many hours of sleep you get a night. That's a new risk factor that's been recently added into the Know Your Numbers group of things. Turns out sleep is incredibly important to your cardiovascular and overall health. And yes, you really should be getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, which unfortunately just about nobody does. Those are some of the basic numbers that we really focus on. And I can tell you literally dozens of other numbers that internal medicine physicians and cardiologists look at, but those are the big ones, the basic ones.
And I know that one of them, or two of the habits that we often talk about is one, quitting smoking, or don't start smoking or nicotine if you have not started. And then the other one is around exercise, which I know we're going to talk about more in a few minutes. But when we're talking about, the holidays, I often think about what are those desserts and those seasonal snacks that we have. I'd love to hear some tips for eating healthy during the holidays, and even some tips around how do we moderate our sweets and even our alcohol consumption, because this is a time of cheer and joy, and sometimes that means overdoing it a little bit.
And it's no secret that holiday living does not always go hand in hand with healthy living. As you mentioned, the decadent recipes, the rich desserts that are sitting on our holiday dinner tables and party tables may not follow the diets that we stick to the rest of the year. But I do have a few tips, and I'm sure Dr. Thomas does as well, that can help you stay on track this holiday season. And the biggest one for me that you will hear me say to my patients, to my children over and over again, moderation is the key. Moderation will be your saving grace this holiday season. There's nothing wrong with enjoying an indulgent festive dinner, but you'll want to make sure that the meals surrounding it are healthy and nutrient dense. For example, you can have a light lunch like a salad with olive oil dressing and opt for a healthy breakfast the next morning, maybe some avocado on whole wheat toast. By eating healthy during the holiday season, you can afford to kind of indulge a little bit more for a few big events. But moderation doesn't just go for food. It's also the key for alcohol intake this season. And I'd like to invite Dr. Thomas to speak a little bit about the risk of binge drinking on your heart.
Absolutely. First, I have to just compliment you. You couldn't have said it any better in terms of how to approach the holidays and to not punish yourself. You're not supposed to eat tree bark and sawdust 3 meals a day, right? You have to, a slice of pumpkin pie is not going to kill you. A spoonful of stuffing is not going to kill you, but 10 spoonfuls of stuffing is probably a little much, right? So moderation, moderation, and moderation. And that goes to alcohol as well. Alcohol can make social gatherings more enjoyable in moderation. The problem with alcohol is it is directly toxic to the heart, directly. We have quite a bit of evidence showing that increased amounts of alcohol consumption, especially over long periods of time, cause abnormal heart rhythms and weaken the heart muscle directly. In addition, it increases the risk of bleeding when you're on certain heart-related medications and can cause a whole host of other problems, including significant elevation in blood pressure. And binge drinking in particular, which is defined as 5 or more alcoholic beverages consumed over a relatively short period of time. The definitions vary a little bit, but it's a fairly large amount of alcohol in a short period of time can specifically lead to a heart condition called atrial fibrillation, or what we call holiday heart. And whoever one of us as a cardiologist draws the short straw on the weekends after a holiday, whether it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, or especially New Year's, we see so many people coming into the hospital where they went to bed, perhaps a little drunk, and wake up the next morning with their heart beating out of their chest with this abnormal heart rhythm called atrial fibrillation. The concern with atrial fibrillation is it elevates your stroke risk 5-fold, 500% over what it would be normally. So it is a particularly dangerous rhythm disturbance, and again, tied directly to alcohol consumption. So again, moderation is the key word, and I couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you for that perspective, Dr. Thomas. We've talked a little bit about some of the unhealthy habits, but the truth is that during the holidays, there's so much to do. We're busy running around doing 100 different things. It's not always easy to keep up with those healthy habits, like getting our 30 minutes of exercise every day, like eating 5 servings of fruits and veggies throughout the day. How do we do it? How do we keep up our healthy habits during the holidays? Dr. Pensabene, do you want to lead us off again?
Yeah, and it can certainly be challenging, but hopefully this topic will be your reminder to try to stay physically active and mentally well during this holiday season, and not all physical activity needs to be exercise. It doesn't need to be a cardio class at the gym, to count towards the 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity. So a tip, especially during holiday gatherings and when you might find yourself on downtime from work, is to take a walk after dinner. Walking after a meal has several distinct benefits. You do get some exercise. You can get your heart rate going at a time you might not otherwise be exercising as frequently when you're going from party to party or meeting to meeting. It also can provide some quiet time alone to allow you to de-stress. And it helps aid in digestion all at once. So all of these factors combined are good for your physical and mental health, and can help you really stay on track. And there may be some people who believe that it's best to wait after you eat, let yourself digest for a while, that old wives' tale that you can't go swimming after you eat. But studies actually show that to maximize these benefits, walking immediately after a meal is better than waiting an hour or so. So just try to stay active would be one of my tips there. And Dr. Thomas touched upon it before, and it's also something that can be very hard, but trying to stick to your typical sleep schedule, allowing for a change in schedule when there's a family in town or a party that night. But throughout the month, sticking to your sleep schedule will improve your quality of sleep now and set you up going into the new year. And studies show, unsurprisingly, that irregular sleep schedules lead to poor sleep quality, fatigue, poor eating choices, and daytime sleepiness that really make it hard to stay active and to keep moving. So one easy way is go to bed and wake up as close to the same time as you do every day. Dr. Thomas, do you have any tips for staying active or mentally well?
Absolutely. And this is something I talk about with literally every patient every single time I see him or her. And it really goes back to what you were talking about earlier about stress. There is no better stress reliever than exercise. When you look at the biologic effects of stress on the body, the fact that you get these increase in stress hormones, noradrenaline, cortisol, et cetera, the best way to diffuse those stress hormones out of your system is to exercise. And there's a couple of absolutes here. You're never too old to exercise, and any exercise is good exercise. Okay, putting one foot in front of the other is better than sitting on the couch. All right. Yes, we want about 30 minutes of aerobic activity, getting the heart rate up 5 days a week or 150 minutes a week. But anything is better than doing nothing. And the flavor of exercise doesn't matter. When people ask, how should I exercise? My first answer is do something you don't hate. If you hate it, you're not going to do it. You're not going to be regular about it. If going on a treadmill makes you sick to your stomach, don't go on the treadmill. Play a game of basketball, do a Zumba class, kickboxing, rowing, swimming, elliptical, whatever, doesn't matter. Something that gets you going, gets you moving, and helps diffuse those stress hormones out of your system. Exercise is better for stress relief than just about anything else. It's certainly better than alcohol. It's better than stress eating. It's better than just about anything. And you want to make it a part of your regular routine. Everybody sleeps part of the day. Everybody gets up and has some food at some point in the day, right? You want to make exercise as a regular part of your routine as brushing your teeth or doing any other activity. The more it becomes a non-negotiable part of your schedule, the more you will be able to do it. So just make it something that you have to do, and it doesn't matter how busy, it doesn't matter how stressed, doesn't matter how tired, doesn't matter whether it's raining or snowing or whatever. Just do it.
You just reminded me that, the American Heart Association, we have so many wonderful resources and infographics. One of them talks about how household chores count and they add up. Vacuuming, walking around, playing, running around after your children, you're taking steps, you're being active. And I love that reminder because it's really every little bit helps. And sometimes we are active and might not even be aware of just how beneficial that is. I also want both of you to I want us to focus on women's health for a few minutes. I know how important the Go Red for Women movement is to both of you. Let's focus in on women in holiday health. I often think back of a volunteer that we had in New York City, and she was a survivor, and she was out with her family around Christmas, and they were going to see the tree at Rockefeller Center. They were walking through Times Square. They were going through Central Park, and throughout that whole time, she was having chest pain. And she kept saying, "Oh, it's nothing. My grandkids are with me. I don't want them to worry," until finally she couldn't ignore it anymore. And it turned out that she had suffered a heart attack earlier that day. We often hear that story of women having just a little heart attack. Let's dispel some of those myths, and let's really talk about why women need to prioritize their health, bring it to the top of their to-do list, especially around the holiday season. Dr. Pensabene, do you want to get us started?
Absolutely. And this ties back directly to how we kicked off this conversation, talking about holiday stress and the effects that it had on people. And the American Psychological Association ran another study designed to explore the effects of stress during the holidays, and they found that women experienced a much more dramatic spike in stress levels over Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, and Christmas than men. And when asked if their stress levels were higher than normal over the holidays, 44% of women said yes. When asked if they felt able to relax over the holidays, only 27% of women said yes. And in contrast to our male counterparts, 41% of men felt that they were able to relax during the holidays. And the APA also determined that in order to cope with stress, women most frequently turn to food for comfort and drinking as an escape. So coping with the stress in unhealthy ways can really take a direct toll on our mental health and our physical health. And it's important for women and everyone to remember to take time for themselves every day. Go for a walk, as we said, meditate once a day, even offer to go to the store for a few minutes of quiet. And what's even more important is that women do not neglect their heart health and their cardiovascular health. Dr. Thomas, what would you like to share about this?
Yeah, just following up on that, it's so common for women to worry about everything else other than their own health, and then particularly their heart health. A couple of statistics just to really bring this home. So we know that roughly about 40,000 women die of breast cancer every year, and that's something that women focus a lot of attention on, and they absolutely should. But the 40,000 women that die of breast cancer every year is dwarfed by the 450,000 women that die of cardiovascular disease every year. In fact, more women die of heart attacks than men in any given year. And one of the things that makes this challenging is that women often don't recognize the signs of a heart attack because in a third of women, it's not the classic elephant sitting on your chest. Sometimes women have unusual symptoms about 1/3 of the time. It can be pain between the shoulder blades. It can be unexplained nausea and vomiting. It can be dizziness that comes out of nowhere, sudden inability to breathe, or even pain in the jaw or teeth. I give the example of the dentist across the street from my hospital saw a woman urgently for what was thought to be a broken tooth that was causing excruciating pain. He looked in her mouth, saw nothing wrong. He said, "I'm a little concerned about your symptoms." And he sent her over to our emergency room, and lo and behold, she was having a heart attack. And the only symptom was tooth pain. So women need to pay attention to their bodies, listen to what's going on. Yes, not every nausea or vomiting episode is a heart attack, but you want to pay attention to it. And if you're concerned and if you're worried and if it's not getting better, seek attention, right? So we often spend most of our time talking about men and heart disease, but women are actually affected more than men. So we really should spend a lot more time talking with women about this. And I'm so glad we're talking about it today.
Right. Listen to your body, make your doctor's appointments now. Really do not neglect your own health. We make so many appointments for our family members and appointments for our bosses, but really this is the time to have that conversation and to make sure that you're taking care of your own health.
Yeah, and Dr. Thomas, you touched upon it a little bit, but I'd love for you to expand on it. What are some of the different heart attack warning signs and symptoms that women might experience compared to men?
Yeah, so when you have a heart attack as a man, it's very classic. It's a burning, or it's a pressure, or it's an unrelenting discomfort on the left side of the chest. It sometimes goes down the inside of the left arm or up into the left side of the neck. And that is the classic presentation of a heart attack. It can often be accompanied by profuse sweating, a little bit of nausea, and just a sense of doom, we call it. But for a lot of women, it's not that at all. And it can be much more subtle. And again, the example of the tooth pain or jaw pain without left-sided chest pain. Sometimes it's pain on the right side of the chest, or it's a sensation of heaviness in the arms without any discomfort whatsoever. The myriad presentations are part of the reason why women died more of heart attacks than men for many years in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, until we finally, around the year 2000, started to recognize that these unusual symptoms were, in fact, heart-related and not something else. So again, when in doubt, seek care. Get it checked. Don't just sit there and hope it's going to go away. Get checked out. It can save your life.
Those are such important words of warning, and thank you so much, Dr. Thomas, for providing some more clarity on those differences. You know, to transition on to the next topic, it's still in line with our holiday health, but it's something that both of you wanted us to mention as we get into colder weather, at least in the Northeast where we are, and that's around snow shoveling in the winter season. I know that with some of the doctors we've talked to, we do see that first snowfall usually is accompanied by an increase in cardiac episodes. Dr. Thomas, do you want to talk a little bit about what are some of those things to look for or to be aware of when you're shoveling snow in the winter?
Sure. And I'll start with just a simple basic idea, which is if you're over the age of 50 and you're trying to figure out whether it's safe for you to shovel snow or not, first and foremost, ask your doctor. Okay, it's a simple, easy question to ask. There's a lot of physiologic changes that happen when people shovel snow, and I'll take just a moment to walk through it. But if you put yourself in a position where it's 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and there's about a foot of wet snow that's fallen overnight into the morning, and you're sitting there watching a ball game, and you're relaxed, your temperature is 70 degrees in your house, and you haven't done any physical activity that day. Think about the changes that go on in your body when you suddenly, without any warm-up whatsoever, go outside where it's 32 degrees, so a drop of almost 40 degrees in temperature suddenly, and you begin doing aggressive isometric type exercise, which is grunt type of exercise, right? Nobody shovels snow lightly. Everybody does it the same way over and over again. You try to get as much snow on the shovel as you possibly can, and you try to throw it as far as you can. And it causes a huge spike in adrenaline in your system. And without warming up, without any sort of precaution, your adrenaline levels go from 0 to sky high. And those are exactly the type of things that can trigger the rupture of a plaque in a coronary artery that can lead to a heart attack. And so I tell my patients over and over again, if it's safe to shovel snow, you got to be smart about it, right? When you get up and you go outside, do not immediately start shoveling snow. Give your body a minute or two to just adjust. Walk around a bit, get your heart rate up a little bit. Everybody should warm up before they exercise. Shoveling snow is an exercise. Therefore, take some time to warm up. And then do small bites without throwing it long distances, right? It's relatively common sense stuff that we all ignore at the end of the day. But I'll throw it to Dr. Pensabene, see if she has other recommendations.
Yes, thank you. You know, I tell my patients exactly the same thing. It's so funny that we both wanted to address it, but it makes sense. You know, after the holiday season or with the holiday season comes the wintry season. And we've both seen people have heart attacks and cardiac events after shoveling snow. So much, in fact, that sometimes heavy wet snow is called heart attack snow because of the great effort required to move it that can increase your risk of having a heart attack. And I give pretty much the same tips as you know, don't shovel first thing in the morning, make sure you're up and moving a little bit more, and give the sun a chance to warm things up a little bit as well. And as you really reminded us to warm up before shoveling, this is exercise. It is hard work. So make sure you take a few minutes to stretch, get that blood flowing. And, you know, some things that we can do, we can dress appropriately as well, making sure that you cover your hands, your head, and your mouth. Covering your mouth with a little scarf will help you inhale warmer air and can help you avoid some respiratory problems. And, you know, watch for those warning signs that you talked about. Women and men experience them differently, but anybody experiencing tightness in the chest, lightheadedness, dizziness, you know, these could be signs of a heart attack or a heart event. So make sure that you call 911 and get appropriate help. I shared this with my internal team that we were going to be discussing this tip on today's webinar, and one of my colleagues shared that her stubborn grandfather refused to warm up before shoveling snow and did exactly what you said, just went right out there. And unfortunately, he suffered a heart attack. And I'm sure that story rings true for many of us.
Yeah, and thank you both for providing us with that, really a public service announcement, because I know that so many of us on that Sunday afternoon watching the game, maybe sipping on a beer, we usually will go straight from the couch to the driveway or the sidewalk to clear the path. So thank you for those tips. I think as we're making our way through the holiday season, typically the end of the holidays is New Year's Day. And with the new year often comes that opportunity for our New Year's resolutions. We have big plans and big dreams of how we're going to make the most of the new year. But the reality is that those resolutions often don't last beyond the end of January. Let's try to change that. Dr. Pensabene, what are those ways to really make plans to have a healthy and successful 2023?
As you said, Diego, the new year is the time many people commit to making a new healthy start. We want to do it all, though. We want to eat better, exercise more, lose weight, quit smoking, but for many of us, this adds to the stress that can then affect our physical and mental health. So the most important thing as we go into the new year with New Year's resolutions is to set realistic expectations and start small with changes that you can ramp up over time. Set yourself up for success by gradually adding in a healthy habit. Look for opportunities to make a healthy swap, at least one meal per day for a week, or try to walk for 5 minutes, instead of scrolling through social media. So really taking these small steps will help you build up over time and maintain that healthy lifestyle. And a healthy start doesn't always need to coincide with January 1. Anytime is the right time to make a healthy lifestyle change. A few other ones I like to share with my patients. I'm sure they're similar to ones Dr. Thomas shares, but it's something that is common. If you have a patient in an exam room talking to you, in November, December, towards the end of the year, especially one that's put on a few pounds, they're talking to you about their New Year's resolution. Oh, it come the new year, doc, I want to do this. I'm going to do this, So a few other easy things that you can do is think lean when it comes to protein, plant proteins like nuts and legumes, fish, seafood, low-fat, non-fat dairy, lean meats are the best bet when picking protein. Replacing red and processed meat with other protein sources or plant-friendly protein sources is associated with lower death risk from cardiovascular disease. So starting small and swapping your proteins for leaner, more healthy ones are some tips that I commonly share with my patients.
Thank you. How about you, Dr. Thomas? What are some of those tips that you share with your patients when they're looking to start a healthy new year?
Certainly everything Dr. Pensabene said, it's so important just to amplify that if you set a goal that you're going to run a marathon from, January 1st down to March 1st, it's not going to happen. So you have to be realistic. You have to be accepting that small short-term goals help move you forward towards a larger goal that you may have. And to be kind to yourself, okay? We beat ourselves up all the time for failing to achieve what we've set out. Listen, none of us is perfect. We all try to achieve some level of perfection, but we never get there. Look, all of us have failings. All of us fall off the wagon where we don't eat right, we don't exercise right, we do bad things to our bodies. The thing is not to get disgusted with yourself and just say, I'm giving up. It's to say, hey, I'm human. Okay, I have a setback, and then get right back on and start again, right? Don't beat yourself up. If you're trying to quit smoking and you fail, guess what? Failure is normal when you try to quit smoking. Try again and keep trying. If you're trying to get into shape and it's not working the first few times, keep trying. If you're trying to eat a healthy diet and you keep going back to the donuts, keep trying, okay? Be kind to yourself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Pensabene. I want to ask you for a favor. We can switch things up just a little bit. We do have a special hands-only CPR demonstration that I want to share with this audience. Then after the demonstration, I want to bring you two back because we do have a few questions that have come in through the Q&A. So I want to address those questions and then give you an opportunity to leave us with a final word of wisdom. How does that sound?
Fantastic.
Sound good?
Thank you.
All righty. So I'm going to ask all of us to go off camera, and then we're going to invite Melinda Murray-Nyack. Well, let me set the stage. The holidays are a time where we do gather with our families, and it's also a time where cardiac arrest is rampant. And we know that there are more than 350,000 cardiac arrest incidents out of hospital in the United States every year. So it's so important that we all know how to do hands-only CPR. I want to welcome Melinda Murray-Nyack. She's a CPR and AED advocate who's going to share her story briefly and also share with us how to perform hands-only CPR. Welcome, Melinda.
Happy holidays, everyone. My name is Melinda Murray-Nyack, and I'm here to tell you that the gift of life is the greatest gift that you can give to someone. I lost my only child to sudden cardiac arrest, and 3 years before that, my husband. And I know that if I knew then what I know now, maybe they'd still be here. You can help someone in your family by simply learning 3 things: call, push, shock. If you approach someone and they're unresponsive, you need to immediately initiate help. What you would do is you would approach that unresponsive person and you'll tap them firmly on both shoulders and you'll say, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" If there's no response, you need to immediately get help. Using your cell phone, you'll call 911. You'll call family members or friends or anyone around you. "Help, help, I need help." To get them to come to you and help you. And then you'd immediately send someone to go look for the AED. If there is one, it will be brought to you, and you'll immediately start CPR. With the heels of your hand, you can effectively deliver effective compressions. With your dominant hand, you will place your other hand over it and lace your fingers, just like this. You will lock your elbows. You will lean over the person, on the side of the person with your full body weight, and with your hands, the heel of your hand in the center of the chest, just like this. And you're going to press hard and deep, continuously. You will continue this until help arrives, being the emergency responders. If you get tired, don't worry. Anyone can learn this, and it's easy enough to tell them while you're doing compressions. You can ask that person, "Do you know CPR?" And if they don't, you can say, "Just do what I do." Place your hand in the center of the chest and press hard and deep, just like I'm doing. But you want to make sure you're not off the chest for more than 10 seconds. So you actually do a countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that person will immediately go on the chest of the person. You will continue this practice until help arrives, that being the emergency responders. So I'd like to wish from our family to yours, happy holidays.
Thank you so much, Melinda, for sharing that with us. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to Melinda. She's actually one of the most resilient volunteers who I've ever met. After losing her husband and her son to heart disease and sudden cardiac arrest, she has now taught more than 27,000 people how to save a life with hands-only CPR. So she really is an amazing ambassador of our mission. And hopefully you're able to take away that life-saving skill. I now want to invite back Dr. Pensabene and Dr. Thomas. Thank you both. And as we transition towards the end of the webinar, there are a few questions that came in to the chat box. I'd love your help addressing those questions. So the first one is this one. It is it possible to reverse heart disease, or is the treatment to manage it going forward to prevent it from getting worse?
I'll certainly start with that one. The holy grail in cardiology is to come up with the equivalent of Drano that we can sprinkle into the arteries and unclog them. But for right now, that does not exist. And so we know that plaque, the yellow waxy stuff that builds up and eventually clogs your arteries, probably starts when you're 8 or 9 years old and grows slowly throughout life. And we really don't have a mechanism to reverse plaque. What we really have are strategies to stabilize it and prevent it from getting worse. But stay tuned. Through research funded by the American Heart Association, we're continually looking for the next great thing that can potentially help unclog arteries and have a Drano type effect.
Dr. Pensabene, do you want to add anything about reversing heart disease?
I will leave it to the expert, Dr. Thomas. I do, stabilizing and managing heart disease and chronic health conditions is often the goal. Although some chronic conditions are reversible, our goal is to make sure that your numbers are stable and to keep you on a heart healthy level. So I concur with Dr. Thomas.
Thank you so much, both of you. And then the second question that we received, I think Dr. Thomas, I think I'll give you an opportunity to comment on it first. And it reads like this: I'm 28 years old, exercise regularly, and live a relatively healthy lifestyle. However, I had heart pain during the Thanksgiving holiday when I hosted at my house and have concerns and would like to go to a cardiologist. What test should I ask them to perform when I go?
I actually get asked that question a lot. First and foremost, thank you for putting that into the chat and asking, and for taking care of yourself and getting checked out, which is the most important thing. And I often phrase this in the following way. When I have somebody come over and is building a deck for me, I don't ask what nail he's using or what hammer he's using. I let the expert do what he's good at doing, which is building the deck. So I'm not going to suggest that you get any particular test. I'm not going to suggest you do any particular type of treatment. Just tell your symptoms exactly as they are to the cardiologist or your primary care physician, and let that individual, that professional, then choose the best course of action for you. Dr. Pensabene, do you have anything to add?
Absolutely. I think, it's important for this person who asked the question and for all of us to make sure that we are a good historian and that we are really describing what we felt to the doctor and let them recommend the proper test. Especially for chest pain and for heart-related symptoms, adjectives are important. Don't just call it pain. Use descriptive words like dull, throbbing, intense, burning, tingling, heavy, or piercing. What did it feel like? Rank it on a scale of 1 to 10 as well, with 10 being the greatest discomfort you've ever felt. And make sure to mention any other symptoms that you felt along with this chest pain or chest discomfort, and be specific. Instead of just saying you felt tired, talk about the specific changes in your day-to-day life. For example, if one of my patients became too weak to use her hair dryer and she was needing 2 hands to lift a glass of water. And rather than just saying, I can't do things like I used to, doc, make sure that you're specific and give context and explain any differences, in how you carry out your daily activities. So be prepared, write things down, be specific, and then let the doctor recommend the right test.
Well, as we reach the top of the hour, I'm just amazed, and I want to express my gratitude to you as our experts for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. I want to give you an opportunity, starting with you, Dr. Thomas, to leave us with a final word, a nugget, a wisdom, a memento, a gift to take home that can help us be a little healthier this holiday season?
You know, I can really sum up my entire philosophy about health into one single word, and that's consistency, right? Be consistent about your sleep patterns, be consistent about your exercise, be consistent about your diet. The greatest athletes, whether it's a Michael Jordan or a Tiger Woods or whomever, they might have had good genetic profiles and might have been born with some talents, but they got great because they were consistent with their approach to becoming great. They wouldn't have been who they were without the consistency and the practice that went into it. So just make it a point to be consistent with how you approach your health, and you're going to be successful, period.
Thank you, Dr. Pensabene. You've been such an amazing supporter, and you know, I know that you bring so much knowledge and lived experience to the role, the leadership role at the American Heart Association. I want to give you the same opportunity to leave us with that gift of knowledge and wisdom that we can carry with us to 2023.
Well, I believe Melinda gave us the best gift we could have received during this webinar, which is a way to save lives. It was such a powerful demonstration and wonderful gift that she just delivered to my Mastercard community and to our community. I'm so grateful. So thank you for that. And I am just going to rehash one of the messages that we spoke about earlier on in this discussion. And it's something that I share with everybody. And it's about moderation. You know, one word Dr. Thomas uses, consistency. The one word I'm going to leave us with is moderation. In so many ways, it's the key to reducing stress during the holidays. Moderation in your diet, in your spending, in your commitments, your alcohol intake, your personal and professional responsibilities, your activities, etc. From A to Z, embrace moderation throughout the holiday season. You will be glad you did, and so will everyone else.
Well, thank you, Dr. Cara Pensabene. Thank you, Dr. Patrick Thomas. Thank you, Melinda Murray-Nyack. Thank you, our viewers, our listeners, for joining us today. And I want to share one more deep thank you to Mastercard for continuing to support the mission of the American Heart Association with a focus on health equity. And I want to wish you all a happy and heart-healthy holiday season and a happy New Year 2023. Thank you all. Take care. Bye.